Lisa Lerman, professor of law at the Catholic University of America, Columbus School of Law, called this story a mental magnet on a national public radio podcast. Elaborating, she said, "Many other cases that were taught at the time have faded from memory, but this case continues to fascinate law students and faculty not only in the United States, but all over the world. I found some photos from the case on the internet of a German professor. Also, I was teaching the case to a group of Polish law students last year, and some of the students said they had already studied the case in a Polish philosophy class." What's been missing in classrooms, discussions, and public seminars are answers to a lot of unanswered questions. Why would two lawyers, fathers of teenaged girls, keep secret the location of their clients' female victims' bodies while their families pleaded with them for information? How far did one of the lawyers go in helping Garrow, a convicted felon, stay on the streets when he should have been back in prison? Had they initially hoped to be paid before being forced to take the case as public defenders? How over the decades have the two lawyers gone from villains to heroes in certain circles? What drove Robert Garrow to become a serial rapist? How many people did he kill? What cold cases today point to him as the culprit? Whatever happened to his family? Why did New York state officials prevent the investigator from pursuing more cases involving Garrow? How did Garrow fool most of the state corrections bureaucracy? This book provides those answers with objective reporting and, in the aggregate, serves as a compendium for Belgi, more commonly known today as the Missing Bodies Case or Buried Bodies Case. Introduction. 1973. An Uncertain Future. It wasn't until 1973 that Americans could say the turbulent 60s were really over. The decade of political assassinations, war, and civil unrest had hung around the first few years of the 1970s like an unwanted houseguest. As 1973 marched on, as President Richard Nixon began his second term, and as America ended its involvement in Vietnam in the spring, most of the clamor of the previous decade was officially jettisoned into the history books. Unfortunately, new problems abounded. Foremost was Watergate. The scandal had, by degrees, engulfed the nation. The summer of 1973 was the summer of Watergate, but other ominous events hovered over the nation like tear gas ready to rain down. The crime rates in the major cities were out of control and hitting astronomical proportions. The official U.S. murder rates released from the previous year came in at almost 19,000, a historical high. In New York State, murders surpassed 2,000 for the first time, and forcible rapes, at least those reported, had nearly doubled since 1965 to more than 4,000. The economy was collapsing. Inflation was knocking. The Arabs were threatening an oil embargo. The cost of gas was about to go through the roof or maybe dry up altogether. The draconian Rockefeller drug laws in New York were scheduled to take effect on September 1st, putting many nonviolent marijuana peddlers away for a long time. It was also a much different America. No cable television, no internet, no social media. People lived in vacuums between the morning newspapers and the evening television news. Days were longer. Kids played outside, came home for dinner, and then disappeared again until the streetlights came on. Lastly, two notable customs from the 1960s had survived into the new decade. Young men wore their hair long, and hitchhiking continued as a means of transportation for both men and women. This culture was the setting for one ex-convict who was on the roads hunting for women. His name would become public during a manhunt in the serene Adirondack Mountains in northern New York State, a frightening episode that became legendary and changed the peaceful culture forever following a murder spree at the height of the tourist season. Eventually, his story and the controversial actions of his two attorneys would become national news.